Hi, I'm Katie, and this is episode 57 of Ornamentations, which is going to be an absolutely fabulous one because today I have lots of samplery goodness to close out Sampler September. That would be progress on my two big sampler whips. I also have some stitchy plans to share, as well as a look at what's ahead for Katie Strachan Artisan Embroidery in the coming year. And then I also have a new start to share with you and a new giveaway to thank you, my wonderful viewers and subscribers. But we'll start today just with a quick update on Queen Anne's Pin Pillow before we get to sampler projects. So Queen Anne's Pin Pillow is now open for registration, as was fully discussed in the last Flosstube. A link to the class description where you can register, all of that is included in the description, and then a big blah 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 about the class, as well as a full unboxing of the class kit is in the previous Flosstube. And I would just like to thank you all, everybody who registered or even just listened to me talk about it for a very long time last time. The class has just been an absolutely wonderful success. I've just been so touched by the reception to it, and thank you so much to everybody who is registered and is joining me on the fabulous journey that is Queen Anne's Pin Pillow. However, spots are still available, and so just for today I wanted to give you a quick look at where Queen Anne's Pin Pillow lives in my own house, and that would be in the Britomart casket. So this is a perfect fit with the interior of the Britomart casket. It also kind of goes with the general color scheme of this piece. So if you just pop the lid and take out the interior tray, you'll find the Elizabethan Valentine. So this class will run again. I hope that registration will open in early 2024. And if you'd like to be notified, I will put a link to that mailing list in the episode. And then in the bottom cavity of the Britomart casket, I'll put a photo in here. It's got mirrors inserted in that bottom cavity, which are just absolutely fabulous. They reflect all kinds of light, which just really amplifies the silver and the sparkle and the glitter of Queen Anne's Pin Pillow. So that is the fabulous home in which my own piece lives, although of course you don't have to have anything this fancy to put it in. It can be a truly standalone finish. I did want to address a couple things that have come up since the last episode, and the first is that I know a few of you are on the fence about this, about whether or not you can do it because you're new to surface embroidery or you haven't done something like this before. Absolutely, yes, you can do it and you can be a success because the directions are written to include everyone, people who have never stitched before, who have never worked with these materials or these stitches before. They are all-inclusive and very, very comprehensive. I would like to reassure you that absolutely, yes, you can do this with me teaching you. I firmly believe that. I would not put a class out that I did not believe people could do, because that's just not good for anybody. And then quick note on frames. I know I talked a lot about frames in the last episode, but last time I showed you a slate frame. So I frequently use a slate frame with my Lowry floor stand for my own larger embroidery projects, which is a more expensive setup, but there are inexpensive options out there. So these are mini stretcher bars that I've reinforced in the corners with just cheap hardware store brackets. You can also use frame locks, which are available from LNS's, and those can just be put into the corners with a standard tack. So really, really easy. And then in place of an expensive floor stand setup, you can use just hardware store clamp. I use these myself when I am filming tutorials with my stitching setup. I clamp my frame to my dining table to give a more stable surface for filming so you can get a clear picture of what I'm doing. This works. And so reinforced stretcher bar and clamp setup probably doesn't cost you more than $25, $30. It's not expensive. So there are less expensive ways to go about this than the full bore Lowry and slate frame setup that I myself am using on some of my bigger projects. And just on a general note, I love everything that I stitch, and that's why I do it, because my time is really valuable to me. So for me to choose to expend my time on something, I have to really want to do it. But the classes are very special to me because I put so much of myself into them. These are an expression of me, just as much as the caskets are, and the kits have been a family production. So some of this was shared on Instagram, but my mom ironed all of the fabrics that went into your kits, and then one afternoon she and I sat down together and wrapped them all in acid-free tissue paper, closed them up with stickers. She put on a lot of the labels on the threads and all of that, and then my dad assembled every single one of these kit boxes. We have also been handling all the packing and shipping it together as a family. So not only are these something that's really personal and a passion project for me, they are also a family production to bring them all to you. They are made and packed and shipped with love and care, and I hope that you can see and feel that when you open your class kit, because I really do just pour my heart and my soul into my design projects in particular, as much as I love all of the different things that I do and that I stitch. But with that, I'm going to clear a little bit of this away and we'll move on to Sampler September. Okay, Sampler September. So this will be my last Flosstube for September, although we will look at the very last of my progress on this piece in the next Flosstube, because I will stitch on this until the very end of September. But that is my start for Sampler September, which is Cross Stitch Antiques, Oh Sweet Humility, Eliza Townsend's work. So I discussed with you at length some of my changes, my color vision on this piece in the last episode, but this is my my progress, which is fairly significant. It looks like more than last time, although it's still, oh gosh, you know, you put so many hours and then you hold this up on Flosstube and it looks so minuscule, but I've put another flower into the border, which did actually represent quite a decision for me. So in the original border, those outer flowers are in alternating colors, and I was a little unsure what to do about that because I do have a second pink in my conversion, but this actually looks quite harsh against the vibrant red outlining for that flower. So I've been kind of toying around with different ideas, and I eventually decided to just do all of the outer flowers in that really just super intense, very magenta-y pink. And my plan is to, next year, because I'm definitely not going to get to this before September 30th, is to work the left side of the border all the way up, do the outside flowers as I've done them here, and then see what they need in terms of balance, then using the inner carnations to try and ameliorate some of that intense pink if it does turn out that it's just a little too much pink. Although I think a really intense pink, green, blue, pink, red, green focused piece can be really visually satisfying. That was kind of my general color scheme for the green casket, which I think is one of my most successful pieces so far. So I guess really this is kind of my sampler complement to the green casket. And I think that that really intensely pink border should be balanced out by some of the green and the other elements here. And I have been putting in some work on the grass. As you can see, I've got a few more funky animals in. I've done a little more on the dark green grass. And then I've also started the pond, which presented a little bit of a color question. So if you look at the original, the pond is very yellowy. It's a little lighter. My color, which is 2179, is darker and more bronzy. This is a problem with Surfine. The range has hugely expanded from what used to be available. There are so many great colors, and for most conversions you can find everything that you need. But once in a while the exact perfect shade isn't there because the color range isn't as extensive as 103. So I could have gone for something that was a little lighter but not quite so tonally consistent. I decided to do the bronzier color because it was a little too dark, but it's tonally consistent. Also, I think that bronzy brown note will also just kind of help balance against the sweetness of all of that pink. I think there's enough bright color in here that it'll be able to stand up to it. Not that you can really see very much of that so far. Oh my gosh, I feel like I spent so much time on this, but oof. And then, oh, another thing, this was unfortunate. I misunderstood the chart. So this is an experience showing. I think I have mostly stitched with the same designers who chart in the same ways. That means that the charts either line up, like the pages of the charts line up perfectly, or they've marked their overlap with a grayed out strip. Eliza Townsend's work has an overlap that's not marked with the grayed out strip. I think you're supposed to figure out that the motifs don't line up and count accordingly. I, however, was just counting over on this top line of grass so I could get to the house, establish the area beneath it, and then work down and out. I blew past that and missed it entirely. The only reason I'm mentioning this is so that, you know, nobody else makes the same mistake, because I've got an extra 3 rows on that side of the house. So my house is going to be a little off kilter because by the time I picked this up, I had done most of that grass and there was no way that I was ripping that out. So I'm going to put some extra rows in at the border. I think the corners would be really good places to extend it at the top and correct for that. You know what? My house is just going to be a little off kilter. I like that Eliza Townsend is kind of quirky. All of those animals are legitimately weird. And, you know, that's just going to be the way it is. Not everything in life is perfect, and I'm fine with that. And then, oh, on the conversion, I did want to note, so I have added in 2719, which is one more color on my conversion, and I'll put what I've got in that in the description with the notation, of course, that this is still not complete. It won't be complete until I resume this piece, probably not until next year. But when I am done with the conversion, I'm going to write up 2 versions of this. So Surfine, exactly as I've used. This is, as I mentioned last time, Soie Surfine on Legacy Linen, 45 count jersey cream, which is a thinner thread than most stitchers would go for, but I think the coverage looks great. You know, you're really getting the vividness of the colors, and then the stitches just look so precise and neat. And then that's the back. But so like on that bronzy pond, when you've got the wider color range of Gobelins and 103, there's a better choice for that. So like I'd suggest Gobelins 2212 as opposed to 179 and 103. So I'll do two versions of the conversion, one for super high count stitching and then one for lower counts where you've got a little bit more choice in your thread. There are some Goblin's equivalents or colors that are very close on these threads. So I think you could do a really beautiful conversion with that. And I will share that when I have everything, which, yeah, not gonna be this year because, oh, I've put in a lot of hours and it doesn't really still look like very much. I do love that funky Elizabethan manor house with its towers. It just looks amazing. So I am loving Eliza Townsend, and I can, I can see how my color conversion is going to come together. So I will be stitching on this until September 30th, but at that point I will set it aside because there are some other projects that I do need to work on. And so for the next episode, we'll have, I hope, just a little more progress on Eliza Townsend to look at, but my ongoing sampler whip for the rest of the year will be what we're about to look at, AKGIT 1833 from Modern Folk Embroidery, and then one last look at my threads, which are in my spool folder from the attic. You can give them a call and get an order in for one of these. Isn't that beautiful? Those are just some gorgeous, gorgeous silks. And then the 179, because I now have 11 colors and this only holds 10 spools, but they're mostly what I've been working with, so I haven't bothered to transfer out my threads. Can you hear the banging? So in the video where I talked about the jackhammering, you definitely couldn't hear it. I reviewed the video afterwards, the sound was clean, but all I'm hearing to this side is banging and hammering, and I'm really hoping that you're not hearing all the construction going on right over there. Anyways, let's talk about Modern Folk Embroidery, AKGIT 1833, the Vierlande sampler. Sampler of samplers, love of my life. Although I will admit that this has been a little bit more of a slog recently. I am getting bogged down in those medallions a bit, but I do have some progress to show you. So I finished the next medallion and that completed page 8 out of 20. Ooh, this is a big project. And so now I am on to the very start of page 9. But that does just leave me 2 more pages in this row, and then I'll at least be on to a different type of repetitive medallion, and I'm hoping that I'll kind of get a second wind there because, yeah, I am getting a little bogged down in all that stitching the same thing 4 times over in one motif. But that does, in my experience at least, happen with big projects. There are points where you love them more and points when you love them less, and when you get bogged down, sometimes the best thing you can do is just continue to power on through. Back still looking very clean, and I have been getting a lot of questions about how do I end my threads so that they look so neat. So I've talked about starting more often with the pin stitch. Every thread on this and Eliza Townsend's work is started with the pin stitch to keep the backs super clean. And then to end my threads, I go through my stitches on the back in a few different directions to make sure that it's really secure. You need to make sure that you're picking up plenty of stitches in different directions so that it doesn't pull free. And also be mindful of where the pattern is on the front, because you don't want to carry your thread behind negative space on the front. It'll kind of, eliminate the benefit of trying to keep it so clean on the back. So you have to be mindful of where you're weaving your thread through, but that is how I do it. Just got been getting some questions about that. And then just to recap, this is on Legacy Linen 5363 Sicilian Marzipan, one of my all-time favorite linens. I just want to rub my face against it. It's so soft and fine and just has such a beautiful hand to it. And then the thread is Soie Surfine 2099. The equivalent in 103, if you like the combination, but aren't up to 5363, is 99. So that's AKGIT 1833. It is going to be my focus sampler for the rest of the year. I won't finish this in 2023, but I am hoping maybe 2024. So I'm going to keep on going with that, and we'll see how I do. And then let's talk about stitchy plans. So as I mentioned in the last episode, I need to start stitching and planning further ahead on the Flosstube kits so I can meet demand on those. They have grown beyond any degree I could have imagined when I started this, and so I need to be working further ahead so that I can get you enough thread to make all of the kits that people would like to have. But in doing that planning work, I'm also thinking about the kinds of projects that I kit. So for the first time, I will be kitting a big sampler. That's This Happy Morning by Plum Street Samplers, seen behind me. And since I've been getting questions about that, no, you haven't missed that. We are waiting on a thread to be dyed, so I don't think the kit will be available before early 2024. I'll be sure to keep you updated on that as soon as I have an idea of what the release date is, but it will not be this year. We're waiting on thread. And so This Happy Morning will be the most extensive Flosstube kit yet, and if that does well, then I may look at stitching and kitting other samplers. But I'm also adding some smaller kits, a couple of just really tiny treasures, things I thought that would be just little jewels in silk. One of the things that I enjoyed stitching most recently was Stacy Nash, I Will Cut You Pinky, which I made for my mom, and that was just such a fun little project. Only 2 threads. It would produce an absolutely beautiful finish, and I absolutely loved doing it. So it made me think a little bit about smaller smalls, things that are quick and easy to stitch up but produce a really beautiful finish. So I've identified a couple. I've actually already stitched them, and we'll have one for fall and one for spring next year, and those will be just little jewels in silk, where gorgeous finish and some great choices of silks makes for a perfect tiny project. And that would be a really good way to try out silk for the first time if you're kind of silk curious but haven't made the leap yet, or if you are already a silk stitcher and you just want something quick, easy, and beautiful, was kind of my thinking in selecting those kits. And those will be offered alongside the regular Flosstube kits. I also have a new start, which is for one of the Flosstube kits. This is going to be, I think, probably like late spring, early summer. Does anyone recognize the chart? I'll tell you what it is next time, but brownie points to the first person who can name it in the comments. Hint, this is an older chart. It's not particularly recent. So I have been just working in one quadrant, trying to establish colors. I have 3 more threads to pick, and then I will set this aside and stitch the rest of it a little closer in season. But one thing I wanted to show you here is that I'm stitching just enough to establish the conversion, making sure that all these colors are working together in the way that I thought they would and that I want them to, and that they're showing up on the ground too, because how your thread interacts with your linen is actually just as important as how your threads interact with each other. But it's a good way to talk about also auditioning threads before you start on a project. So here I've started on the design, but you can also do the same kind of thing in the margins. Just test your threads, your colors. Do you like the coverage? Do you like the way that it shows on your linen? Because, you know, a friend articulated this really well, so I'm not using my own words here. I have the same experience and opinion, but I think she said it best. Your time is always the most expensive thing in any project that you do, because stitching is so time intensive, and your materials, even though that's the actual upfront cash cost, aren't the most expensive thing. It's your time that you're pouring into your piece. So you want to love what you're stitching with and you want to love your choices. So in that sense, it's always a really good idea to just test things out before you commit. And it's actually why I'm such a dedicated silk stitcher. It's not just because I love the finish. I do love the finish, but I love the stitching experience. It's like stitching with butter. Beautiful, shiny butter. You've heard me say that before if you're a longtime viewer on my channel, but I love the way that silk feels when I'm stitching with it, and that's why I use it so much. But then moving ahead to my next start, I do have a question to ask you, so please answer this in the comments. And then, as I said, I'm stitching further ahead and I'm taking the opportunity to stitch in season this time, which means I'm starting next year's fall Flosstube kit, which is going to be Thomas by Not Forgotten Farms. As one of my favorite Flosstubers would say, I have loved this chart forever, for a million years, and why have I not stitched it? I don't know. You can have so much fun with that guy and his crazy feathers. So I'm doing it. Thomas is the fall Flosstube kit for next year. It's going to be on Cloister Cream. I'm gonna have a great time picking the silks for this, and I will be stitching him this fall just for my own enjoyment to have a fall stitch. But my question to you is, do you want to see it while I'm stitching it, knowing that the kit won't actually be available until next year? So answer in the comments, and again, please answer whether or not you're a customer who's interested in the kit, because whether or not you ever buy a kit, you're somebody who watches my Flosstube, so I want the content to be interesting and varied. So that's also the prompt today for the giveaway. Tell me whether you would like to see my stitching in real time for kits that are further out, or if I should hold those and show them closer to when the kits will actually be available. Is it too much of a tease to show you this now, knowing that the gratification is a ways off? And then to entice you to answer, and just as a general expression of thanks for all of my fabulous viewers, that leads me to today's giveaway. So to enter, use the prompt and then give me an answer on my question. Today's giveaway is what I would like to call a sampler of some of my favorite linens. A few people have asked me recently for some recommendations on just what are some staple legacy linens that I like to work with. These are a few. I have some others. Fuller's Teasel, which is what I used on this Happy Morning, is just like a great all-purpose neutral, but I've pretty much run through mine, so that's not included. This is a sampler pack of some of my favorite linens. These are all remnants from my own stitching, because these are linens that I love and use. They're not necessarily big cuts, but they're great ways to just try something out and see if you like it. And those are, so most of these are more like sized for smalls, but those are Wafers Cloak. This is the linen that's used for Queen Anne's pin pillow and the Elizabethan Valentine, and I also have this in mind for some Christmas stitching. I like my grays to have more of a brown undertone than a blue undertone, so I am all about Wafers Cloak, which is 38 count. And then again, 38 count Irish Coffee for a more saturated neutral. This is a great one. Strong colors show up really well on this. Again, not a gigantic piece, but definitely enough to just try something out. And then we have a slightly larger piece of Himalayan Fog, which you've seen repeatedly from me. This, oh, I don't know that I can actually pick a favorite linen, but this would be pretty close, because the way colors look on this lighter gray just makes them come alive. I can't say enough about how much I love Himalayan Fog. I'm getting distracted by the banging. I really hope you can't hear that. And then if I had to pick a single favorite color, I couldn't actually pick which count. It would be this one, Russian Tea Cake, and this is the largest piece. So Russian Tea Cake is 37 count, and this is just beautiful off-white. It's what I used for the Simple Harmony box in the 30 sewing count, and then the same color but in different counts is actually what I've used on AKGIT and Eliza Townsend's work. I love how a really clean off-white with some subtle undertones can just make colors pop. I think the colors for Eliza Townsend just shine out on that really clean, pristine linen. So that's one of the reasons I just adore Russian tea cake. So we've got 4 cuts of linen in 4 different colors and sizes, all high 30 counts. And this is a sampler of some of my favorite linens for you to try out and experiment what you like stitching with. And so the keyword for this is linen. And again, if you could answer the question about what you'd like to see in terms of my longer term kit stitching. Although really that's Thomas, because I'm going to do just enough on this guy to pick the remaining threads and then stitch the rest a little closer to the time. And then there is one giveaway remaining unclaimed from the previous episode. That's the Brodemart notebook. The winner for this is Susan Bajtek, B-A-J-D-E-K. And Susan, you have until October 9th to claim your prize, or I will draw a different winner in time for the next episode. So we may also have a Brodemart winner as well. So winners for the next Flosstube, and then for next time, some seasonal stitching, unless the majority vote is clearly against showing Thomas. I'll definitely have some progress on AKGIT, a little more on Eliza Townsend's work. I've got a few more days until September 30th when I have to focus on some other things. But we will also be looking at the first steps towards another casket. So I am just beginning the design work on my next casket. The concept has been fully realized for quite some time. I think we spoke about that not long after I showed my last casket finish. But for the next episode, in addition to all my current whips, a new start, I'll be showing you the very beginning of a casket journey. So how do I start my design process? What does that look like? And where does the very beginning of a casket come from? And a reminder, Queen Anne's pin pillow is currently open for registration. Oh, I love making those tassels dance. It's so juvenile, but I find it just so fabulously satisfying. And so that's available for registration. I hope that you'll join me. Again, if you have any concerns or any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask them. I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that you might have. Go ahead, give in, join the journey. We're gonna have a really, really great class that I am super excited about, at least. So I'll see you again in 2 weeks, and until then, happy stitching.